So whenever you want, or whenever you see a good spot, let me know, we can pull over. Otherwise, I have the sunscreen right here.
We made it all the way down to Kentucky. Here we are standing in front of the famous historic entrance to the Mammoth Cave at Mammoth Cave National Park. This is the most extensive cave system on the planet with over 365 miles of surveyed passages. Mammoth Cave is not only a national park, but it's a World Heritage Site and a biosphere reserve. But you can't just go waltzing in the front door. You do have to book a tour with the park. We knew we weren't going to see the cave today. We had just driven pretty much all day to get here, and we were just stopping in by the visitor center to get some information. We took a little hike out back and decided to check out the River Styx here, which is a little river of water that emerges from the Mammoth Cave somewhere in the ground below. This was just a short hike off the back of the visitor center past the main historic entrance for the Mammoth Cave itself. It was getting later in the afternoon at this point, and we had reservations for a backcountry campsite, which we were planning to backpack into and sleep at for the night. But upon entering the visitor center and asking around a little bit more about what it took to get a tour of the cave, we were starting to have second thoughts about this plan. The park had literally just opened up its guided tours again from the pandemic closures, and these were sold online. They sold out almost immediately before I even really had a chance to look. The ranger at the visitor station informed us that the self-guided experience is sold on a first-come, first-served basis, and that people get there first thing in the morning and the line is usually out the door. With this information, we knew we had to be in that line bright and early with all the rest of the people. This pretty much gave us no chance of packing up our stuff and hiking out of our backcountry site and somehow beating the crowds to the visitor center in the morning. So we decided to scrap that plan, and that gave us some extra time to explore in the afternoon. So we took our extra pictures at the River Styx, and here we are looking down at the Dixon Cave. This is an old collapsed entrance that used to lead into the Mammoth Cave system. So after that, we went and claimed our camp spot at the Mammoth Cave campground there next to the visitors center, where we set up camp with some friends perusing around the site there. With camp situated, we still had just enough time for a short drive and a small hike, so we went to the Maple Springs trailhead area and checked out some of the trails that we were originally going to hike on our backcountry camping adventure. Here we go, driving on to the Green River Ferry, which is how river crossings are done here, since there are no bridges over the river here in the park at all. A very boring boat ride, but yet it was still exciting for us who aren't exactly used to this sort of thing.
We're cruising.
Where are we going?
Yeah, man.
We're moving?
We're almost there.
I thought we were waiting for the other cars to get on.
And shortly after our ferry ride, we had yet another wildlife sightings. One of my absolutely favorite species, the eastern box turtle. She was an absolute beauty. And it's always important to respect wildlife, especially turtles. And if you see one in the road crossing in front of you, and you can do so safely, it's really good to help them get to the other side and continue on their way before any other car could possibly do any damage to them. From the Maple Spring trailhead, we decided to head around the corner and check out the Good Spring Church. This old church was established in 1842 and was clearly deeply rooted in the culture and the history of the people in this area. It's amazing to me to wonder about all of the things that congregations have prayed about in this church over all these years. This place was absolutely so beautiful. It was just a hidden gem. We were so happy to have stumbled upon this place. We even found a little keepsake memorabilia box that had a bunch of notes from other visitors from different times. It was really cool. And just outside, located adjacent to the church, lies this beautiful little cemetery. We walked around for a little bit and checked out some of these historic gravestones, some of which dated far back into the 1800s. We were enjoying ourselves and thought this place was literally so beautiful that we decided to take a little bit of a drive and check out one of the other marked cemeteries you can find here in the park. Our next cemetery that we checked out was called Temple Hill, located all the way over here on the western end of the park. It was yet another beautiful little cemetery tucked away into the woods, filled with really old historic headstones, including some that have very popular names that you see all over the area. We did stumble across yet another little box turtle while we were here, and we also saw this black and yellow millipede, which was really cool to me. We definitely don't have these where I'm from. We said goodbye to the little creepy crawly, and from the parking lot at Temple Hill, there's a trailhead that takes you to a couple of the backcountry campsites, which I still wanted to check out. So we took a short hike down to First Creek 1 Camp. Here we are overlooking what is called First Creek Lake. I imagine when it fills with water, it looks more like a lake. So at the end of the day, we ended up seeing some really cool critters. We went to some wonderful and gorgeous little cemeteries, and we saw that Good Spring Church, which we really, really enjoyed. All this instead of what we had originally planned was about a 7-mile hike into a backcountry site, and then which would have been another 7-mile hike out in the morning before heading to the cave. We made our way around this big angry beetle and hurried back to the ferry before it made its final run for the evening. We went back to camp and had dinner and went to bed in anticipation of hitting the cave early in the morning.
No weapons, selfie sticks, tripods, monopods, etc., etc. How many's ever heard of white nose syndrome? This is this fungus that affects bats that hibernate. We have bats. Anybody from up north? Where y'all from?
Michigan.
Oh yeah, we have bats. I should have guessed.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have bats that come down here in this area to hibernate.
We were given a quick lesson on the delicate ecosystem of the caves here and the white nose syndrome that's affecting the bat populations around. And just like that, we were ready to head towards the cave. The cool air blasts you like you're standing in a wind tunnel as you descend down into the depths. And as I'm sure you can already tell by now, we were able to snag a couple of tickets for the self-guided walkthrough. And this experience was exactly that. It was a self-guided walk through the cave. It was probably created out of necessity for guests to get into the cave in appropriate numbers and be able to safely distance themselves from other guests and staff members that they have stationed around in the cave. Here we are coming up to the first stop, the large and impressive Rotunda Room. I, for one, am the type of person who would stop and read every sign and try to take in as much history as I can when I'm in these types of places. So I probably would have preferred to have a guided tour. However, I was able to kind of corner one of the park rangers that they have stationed in there, and I was asking him all of the questions that I had, and he was more than happy to go into all of the history of Mammoth Cave with me. He was more than accommodating and actually really excited that I was asking about the tuberculosis ward wing and some of the Native American history that happened in there, and just all the amazing stories that you can get. The Park Service did a really good job stationing rangers around and made it a really enjoyable experience, at least for me. After my history lesson about the cave and learning about famous cavers like Stephen Bishop and how legendary he was and how amazing and what a spirit it would take to explore a cave with the magnitude of this, I was just left with a whole new sense of appreciation for this place. The self-guided tour is short. Well, it can be as long as you want it to be. It's not like anyone's kicking you out. But there's really only a couple features to see. The Rotunda Room, you go down Broadway Avenue and into a section called Gothic Avenue that you can look around in. But you really can't go exploring miles into the cave on your own. There's a couple of really cool restored exhibits, including some really old mining equipment. There's an exhibit with some old Native American artifacts found in the cave, which were really neat. But we really only scratched the surface of what this cave has to offer, and I, for one, cannot wait to come back and try some of the longer, more in-depth caving tours. There's even one which takes you hours and hours throughout the day, which you strap up helmets and put your whole caving gear on and go spelunking, and it just looks amazing. And I'm putting that on my bucket list for sure. Upon exiting the cave, we realized that we had just enough time for one more quick hike in the park, so we made our way over to Sloan's Crossing Pond and did the Sloan's Crossing Pond walk before our next big adventure. I had been tipped off beforehand that this was a hot spot for seeing some reptiles and amphibians, so we had to come and check it out for ourselves, and immediately, right off the bat, there were just common five-line skinks all over the boardwalk. So there were all sorts of these little lizards basking in the sun. We also saw some giant bullfrogs, some of the biggest bullfrogs I've ever seen. It was a cool, quick hike around a really, really beautiful pond. The trail comes equipped with a number of educational signs, which of course we had to stop and read and learn all about the landscape that we were hiking through. Overall, it's a really short trail around the small pond. It's all on this boardwalk here, and making it super easy for anybody to take a hike through. It was just a beautiful day. Great place for us to stop and kill an hour flipping logs looking for critters. We caught our final glances of the Sloan's Crossing Pond before heading out of the park to one of the local canoe liveries, where we had rented a canoe for a nearly 20-mile paddle overnight on the Green River all through the national park system itself. After we had geared up, we spotted our vehicle at the ending point where we would be getting off the river the following day. We snapped a couple pictures to make sure we knew what the river looked like and where we were supposed to get out tomorrow. And then we were heading towards the start of our trip, which would be at the Denison Ferry. We read up on the rules and regulations of the river that were posted at the boat launch here. We reviewed our mileage and paddling times, and we put the canoe in the river next to some butterflies who are getting some minerals off the clay on the banks. And just like that, we are finally floating alone down the Green River one of North America's most biologically diverse river systems. Over 80 species of fish call this river home, and there's no fishing license required as long as you're within the national park system. The river is also considered critical habitat for one of the nation's most endangered animal groups, which is the freshwater mussels. Over 50 species can be found in the water here, with 7 of them being listed as endangered and more being up for consideration. The scenery that surrounded us was stunning, and the features of the landscape started to reveal themselves to us almost immediately. Here we are approaching a cave that we found off the side of the river.
I think we're just go right to the left of it.
We had been told about some of the more large and impressive features on the river by the guides at the canoe rental place before we had left, so we did know about this cave that you could paddle into previously, but we had no idea how far back it went or what it looked like, or we didn't know anything about it before we paddled in.
Hey, this is so scary.
Oh my god, it keeps going.
I'm horrified. What if, is it just gonna drop off?
I don't know. What if there's a waterfall?
Yeah, baby, hold on.
Can you even see?
Before we go,
The water looks like. Oh, don't tip us over and
yeah, I
do
think that tip us, but I don't know if we should, or is that just a reflection?
It's just the reflection, baby.
Yeah, I'm not going any further until I know what the hell's going on. Oh, do we have my headlamp? My headlamp is the only thing that will save us.
I think it's accessible. Alright, hold on. I'm gonna cut the video off.
It turned out the cave wasn't so scary once you take your sunglasses off and shine a flashlight around the place. Just a short paddle in and the cave comes to an end. There's just enough room for you to turn a canoe around in there. It's a really cool spot to check out. And just like that, we were back paddling on this majestic river. We really enjoyed the really high, tall, steep embankments on either side, and also the really thick-looking vegetation. The park is located at a central latitude in the northern hemisphere, allowing it to support both plant species found in the north and in the south. That makes the Green River one of North America's most diverse river systems with both its plant and animal life. This park is so incredibly unique, both above and below the ground, that it's no wonder in 1981 it became a World Heritage Site, and shortly after, in 1990, it became the core area of an international biosphere reserve.
What's that?
The places to stop and take a break were plentiful along this river. There's just so much to see and so many places to just find a stream and walk up and see where it's flowing from. I was even able to cast a line out and do some fishing while Chloe was doing the paddling for a little while. But we didn't do a ton of fishing as it wasn't really our main focus. We wanted to paddle some distance tonight and really just take in the scenery that surrounded us and spend some time with each other. Pretty soon we saw an eagle perched in a tree, and we thought we should pull over and have a look. And of course it flew off before I had the chance to get my camera out. But before we had even realized it, we noticed that we were already pulled over at the most perfect little campsite, so we decided to stop and set up for the night. So big shout out to that eagle for showing us this spot. We set up camp amongst the toads and under the stars. We quickly got a fire going and had dinner to a drowning chorus of toads that surrounded us, and we were treated to the sight of thousands and thousands and thousands of lightning bugs in the night. It was an absolutely wonderful experience. We awoke to what was an absolutely stunning morning, and we knew we were in for another beautiful day of paddling on the Green River. After a quick breakfast, we broke down camp and loaded the boat back up and got right back on the river. And almost immediately around the corner was our next big feature of the day, was this really cool blue grotto. Whoa. Whoa. Is a blue hole. Neat. I am not really sure much about this place. I don't know how it was formed or what it's called really. I just know it's a really cool stop when you're paddling down the river. There's a lot of really cool birds flying in and out of the rocks. The water's an interesting turquoise color. There's a cave over here on the side, and the walls when you're walking up are actually very tall and quite impressive. The next feature we were going to today was again just downstream from here. So we paddled on and saw a sandy beach that looked like it had been traveled quite a bit, so we figured this must be it, and we pulled over and started heading up the path. And again, I don't know much about this feature other than we were pre-warned about a large cave you can stop at. So we knew it was here, but I don't know quite where it was on the river, and I don't know what it was called or anything like that. But it was definitely worth the stop. We could see a massive rock cliff poking out through the trees. We could see how high it was, and then as we came around the corner, we could see the cave opened up into a really, really large and impressive recess into the rocks. I have absolutely no idea if the cave just stops here or if it continues on through those tubes underwater, nor did I have any intention of finding out on this day. So we just kind of chilled here for a bit and hung out and really enjoyed ourselves. This was a really fun stop. We paddled onward, 10 miles further on the day, making it a 20-mile round-trip adventure, starting at the Denison Ferry day use area and ending all the way downstream at Hochin's Ferry. But even after all that, we still were not quite done with cave country. We decided to make one more stop at the Diamond Caverns. This was a privately owned cave that you could pay to go take a tour with a guide that would walk you through and give you a little lesson on the cave and the history and the formations and all the stuff that you see down there. This is what's known as a wet cave, meaning there is actively water in it flowing all the time and dripping through the ceiling and through the rock and everything like that, which creates some really awesome formations. There's a ton of stalagmites and stalactites and full columns that stretch from floor to ceiling. The cave isn't all perfect, however. There are a number of smashed and broken formations from as a result of the cave wars, which apparently were wars between the different privately owned caves in the area. They would go around and try and wreck each other's caves in an effort for their cave to be named the best and for them to get the most tourists and the most money. The amount of history that is preserved in these caves is nothing short of astounding. It's absolutely mind-blowing. At one point in time, one of the owners of the cave had sawed one of the columns in half and polished it, as you can see here. There were a lot of really neat things about this cave. There was some graffiti in the wall where somebody etched their name into the stone from like the middle of the 1800s. There was a chapel in there that somebody carved into one of the rooms. There was even a place where somebody had dropped a piece of cloth and it had been dripped on so many times in the cave that it had begun to be calcified into the formation. There was just a lot of cool, nifty, neat little things around every single corner. The cave overall is really well lit. You can get some really cool pictures in there. All the formations are really beautiful and easy to see. The cave was relatively short, but it was pretty jam-packed with things to see and fun lessons to learn. Here we go on our way out, passing this brilliant feature yet again, grabbing our last minute pictures before driving out of Kentucky and heading to our next spot. It was after a much needed long night's rest on an incredibly comfortable bed that we stopped at the Indianapolis Zoo to admire all the amazing animals.
Just missed it entirely.
We finished up at the touch tank with the rays and we walked by the monkey house here, but we were really keen on heading over and catching one feature we were super excited for was the educational keeper talk about the walruses.
We'll say hello to Ginger again. This is something that I simply do here at the zoo. I live in an apartment, so unfortunately this is not an option for me. But I have friends who do this and they say they don't even notice it on their bill. So it's something that we can do that's relatively simple, doesn't have a huge impact, but that we can make a difference so that we can make a greener future not only for ourselves but for our walruses as well. So I'm going to let them continue to get that raining food there. We'll get a really good look at them. And I'm going to hop off mic, but I want to thank you guys all for being here, for helping us out with our mission to protect nature and to protect these walruses so that we can continue to see them in the future. My name's Madison, and if you guys have any questions at all, I'll be sticking around for a few more minutes, but if I don't get to see you, I hope you all have a great rest of your day here in Indianapolis.
Next up, we're off to spot some reptiles and amphibians. We even got to see some big-time land-dwelling animals like these rhinoceros. Next up were more African plains animals, including these giant ostriches that were displaying to one another.
He's gonna be a jerk. Second thing, look at everyone. Everyone ran away. Look at this guy.
Look at how massive his leg band is.
Look at him smiling. He knows he's a jerk.
And lastly, we had the truly amazing, incredible, and impressive African elephants, which we just could not get enough of. We said see you later to all our new animal friends at the zoo, and we exited through this greenhouse, which really had some huge and impressive plants inside. But we had to call our adventure over as we headed for the car and headed for home.